season finale of Wandavision. Let's get into it. Welcome back. Today we're going to be covering the final episode, of this season. I have no idea if there's going to be multiple seasons, but we like to cover this stuff. A lot of you guys canceled your Disney Plus subscription, rightfully so, and certainly coming from the comic book side of things. You guys want to know my thoughts? So I'm going to give you my thoughts on this episode. As usual, we'll go through everything, and then we'll kind of conclude as far as the direction that it's going with the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything else. Be sure to follow me on all forms of social media. If you don't already, you got the main channel, Young Ripper 59. You also have the second channel, Young Ripper 59 Entertainment. Wherever you're watching this video, I thank you so much for the support, and you should be joining us live at 12 p.m. For Canon's Sake is the name of the show. We shoot that live. If you want to listen to it after the fact, you can, forcanonsake.com, or wherever you listen to your podcast, you can check that out. But 12 p.m. Central, we're live over at the main channel, youtube.com/YoungRipper59. You should come hang out with us. All right, let's get into sort of what we're dealing with episode 9, what is it? Season finale of WandaVision. Now, we start with sort of Agatha. Of course, the conflict that you have right now, and it ended last show. She had control of the kids, and she had mentioned that, okay, you're using this chaos magic. You are the Scarlet Witch, as if she's some urban legend or something of that nature. And she is talking about how, and her motive rather is that she wants control of that power. I guess she thinks she can wield it to do whatever it is that she wants. So she wants that chaos magic, is more so where she's kind of what she's alluding to. And she is trying to rather take this magic from her, or rather have her give it to her. Now, we also see, because at the end of the last episode, you saw White Vision, and the with Sword were making a new vision, or using the parts that it previously, let's say, what was left of the usual vision, and they created this version using some of the magic, or rather that they needed from that hex to revitalize him. So what you're seeing now is he steps on the scene, White Vision steps on the scene, and then Vision, the one that Wanda created in this realm, ends up, fighting him. So you have a Vision on Vision crime going on there. We also see that Quicksilver this is the most interesting part of this. You see Quicksilver is keeping Monica trapped in like this room, which he says is his man cave. And the interesting thing from this is that it kind of shatters, if you will, the notion. And that, okay, we're dealing with that in itself was example of the multiversal element. We know that there's an entire movie coming out soon with Doctor Strange and the whole multiversal aspect there. But what we deal with here is they're trapped, he's trapped, and he's still using his powers of being Quicksilver. You think that, it's just multiversal Quicksilver. You saw at the end of the episode where he pops up, said Snoop is going to Snoop. Was he still under this sort of mind control? Like, what was happening here? And what we do end up finding out later in this episode is that Quicksilver is actually just a guy from that town who, of course, had been under sort of Wanda's control here. And his name is Ralph Boner. So he's not actually who we thought that he was, or multiversal, let's say, Quicksilver, which they brought as he appeared from the Fox universe or Fox's X-Men. That's interesting in itself because, look, this can all be changed at any given time to where, okay, it does turn out that's who it is. But what it does is it shows that they weren't going to go the clear and obvious route. So like I didn't say, I'm not going to say that I predicted it. I said that it would have been preferable instead of going the obvious route with that. They kind of just said, you know what? No. After the whole Agatha thing, when we found out it was her all along, maybe they went in another direction. So it's like, okay, it's not clear and obvious when it comes to this multiversal aspect. If they're just using his face, and it was the whole point was to kind of get you to think that was the case, and it wasn't. So they didn't go with the obvious thing, and I like that. Fourth thing I want to mention here, Jimmy Woo still sucks. I've said time and time again, this is not who I would believe to be in a rendition of Jimmy Woo, leader, Agents of Atlas. I don't see that guy being capable of doing that, but just in terms of his act, it's sort of witty, comical. This isn't Jimmy Woo. This is just a guy named Jimmy Woo. You get more of that as you go throughout this episode. Now, perhaps one of the more interesting things is that the Darkhold is mentioned again. I think the Darkhold existed already in this universe, and it was kind of mentioned. I know more so like S.H.I.E.L.D., Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and what have you. And what Agatha says is that Scarlet Witch's powers, they're forged and they exceed even the Sorcerer Supreme, which isn't necessarily unlike the comic books. It's just more recent decades when it comes to the whole chaos magic and what have you. However, that sort of chaos magic being rooted in that Darkhold is not unlike what we had seen in the comic books with the Elder God who had initially wrote it. So that did sort of happen. They're just going a kind of different route there. But we do see this instance where, moving on, where Agatha does cut the strings of sort of the citizens. You can see them, they're like, hey, man, I just want to see my family. Can you let us sleep? We see your nightmares. And she doesn't believe that, because you got to understand, it's the Scarlet Witch that is, you have to understand that she doesn't understand how really to utilize all of her powers and what have you. So what she's even capable of, she doesn't even understand it. So she can't really believe that, okay, she basically had these guys sort of enslaved here. But at some point, Wanda does end up kind of shrinking the world and rather also letting them free, opening it up so they can all escape and get out of that individual area. We also see here where the military ends up coming in, or sword agents or whoever they are, and Vision, Wiccan and Speed, they're fighting them. Let me say that. And I also want to mention before that, there's an instance where you see that as she let them free and the world is, as Westview is starting to disappear, you see how she controls all of that, but also how that world is tied to those kids. So the kids as well as Vision. We knew Vision when he escaped that he was tied to it, but what we learned in this episode is that also the kids are tied to it as well, because they begin to disappear as that world shrinks. So she, of course, has to stop what it is that she's doing, because if Westview isn't there, they don't really exist. So for the time being, she allows it certainly to exist as is. So we also see that Wanda, there's a cool scene where, because again, she says she's telling Speed and Wiccan that they need to fight the military folk. And the funny thing about that is that we get to see, I guess, both of them kind of utilizing both of their powers. Now, again, those are true to the comics. It's just you're seeing them as very, very young Wiccan. I think they even named them that, Wiccan and Speed, where Speed is obviously fast and Wiccan does have some kind of magical sort of elements to his power. So you're seeing that. And it's cool to see that play out. But there's an instance where Monica Rambeau shows up, and she sees that, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Evil white man that's a villain. So predictable there. Was trying to shoot them, and she steps in front of the bullets and ends up consuming them. And then her eyes light up orange, which is weird. Again, I don't know what direction they're going with their powers, but it's not looking good nonetheless. But she had stepped in front of bullets, she consumed them, and she sees that they use their power, and she's like, cool. And they're like, oh, I like your powers too. We also move on with, there was a discussion between White Vision and regular Vision, or the Vision that was created by Wanda within this Westview universe here. And what we see is that he's curious, because he's like, they're talking with each other, and he's like, okay, you're actually me. You have those memories. They're just kind of being concealed. And White Vision is getting curious, though he was sent there to destroy that version of Vision. That's not what happened. So at some point, he ends up releasing those memories. And so he remembers all of that he is. And he says, I am Vision. And then he flies up in the air. But we don't see him, I don't think, again in that episode. So you can use in your context clues. At some point, Wanda's going to end up linking up with White Vision, which now has the memories of that Vision, of the Vision, and that's basically who it is. Remember, that's the one that got kind of rebuilt from those parts of the previous version of Vision, or the original Vision, if you will. The one that's in this world is just a construct, or Wanda's world, Westview. Now, we do get this last standoff at the end, which was cool. You kind of see the powers between her and Agatha, Scarlet Witch that is, or Wanda and Agatha. And it was a cool scene because it looks as if Wanda is trying to give her the powers as she wanted. You like, give me the chaos magic is where Agatha's coming from. And then you have Scarlet Witch just using her powers, and she's kind of growing old, it looks, as she's doing it, like it's draining her of her powers. But then we see at some point that that's not really what was happening. It was like she was either casting a spell that she had learned from sort of Agatha, so that ordeal that we saw at the beginning where you can use this whatever enchantment and you're the only one within it that can utilize your powers, because that is what we end up seeing. It was kind of weird, very difficult to explain, but you can go watch that if you are that curious. The only thing that's important is that Agatha loses the fight. So there's an interesting thing after all of that. Of course, Agatha ends up losing, and she does end up like changing her into some sort of ordeal where she is going to remain in Westview as the snoopy neighbor. She's not going to know who it is she is. And Agatha does say that you don't know what it is that you unleashed at the end of that, which was very, very cool. And she's like, you're going to need my help at some point. And Scarlet's like, okay, if I do need you, I'll come back. So they're setting the scene up for that to be the case. But as I'll discuss here in a little bit, we're still getting a very wrongful rendition of Agatha, but that's not going to stop you guys from liking her. I certainly understand. Also, we know that she was able to create that construct of vision because part of the Mind Stone is in her, which again, that's kind of moving away from, which I thought they were moving away from before, but they're moving rather back to this idea that she got her powers somehow from the Mind Stone, or rather that it at least amplified it, which I'm not necessarily against that because I want her to be a mutant. Also, the cool thing is that she talks to the kids. She says something along the lines like, thank you for choosing to be my parent, or like my kids. And that was a weird thing to say, because it's like, okay, is she erasing them? Were they always there? Or something like that, like in that town, or belonging to someone else. It was such a weird way that she had said that. But she is making Westview go back to what it was before she had taken really control of it and the people that were in it. And but just slowly but surely, and what you see is her and Vision at the end, obviously, and as the world kind of is starting to collapse, Vision ends up disappearing by the end of that. At the very end, we see that there's a chat with Monica. That's kind of the end credit, and that end credit scene is interesting. And again, there's the ending, the very, very ending of the actual episode is just Wanda going off looking like Scarlet Witch, and she ends up going away. She does briefly talk to Monica, but that was about it. But the end credit scene, it shows her how some FBI or SWORD agent is asking to meet Monica in this theater, and they go in the theater, and you see that the FBI agent turns back into a Skrull. And they're saying that, this old friend, she said something along the lines like this old friend out, it says him, and that he would like to meet her. And he says, where? She says where? The Skrull, or rather, Monica Rambeau says where? And the Skrull like points up. So what that means, I'm sure there's some digging from some guy that, or some of these other creators that'll tell you exactly what it meant. I'm not going to sit there and lie. That's not what I do. I watch the episode and I give it to you as is. So what that meant, I have no idea what that's going, the direction that they're going in. But we do see here in which the Skrulls are here on Earth and they are posing as other people. This sets up the scene for a multitude of different things going into the future. Or we're going to get some I thought we were going to hopefully get into like some Secret War stuff, because Monica was big part of that. But maybe we're going more Secret Invasion. We'll see what happens. But the fact that there are Skrulls in positions like that existing on Earth, and you know that the Skrulls were there because of what happened in the Captain Marvel trash movie that it was. But that, the Skrulls being just seen as these good people is insane in itself. But something's going on there, but that sets up a scene for something else going into the future, as far as future narratives that we know. And now we have confirmed that there are still Skrulls there on Earth posing as citizens of whatever countries, and they're even in higher places when you consider the fact that, well, this is a member of SWORD or FBI agent or whatever. And that's, I guess, the most important part of that ending because it confirms a lot. And if you know the scrolls, maybe we get scroll reward type of stuff, and that will be very, very interesting to see that sort of play out. And simply because Hulkling and Wiccan were a part of the recent one, and they seem to try to dip into more recent comic books with that whole Empire stuff, maybe that's something that will end up being a thing at some point. I have no idea, but it is what it is. Again, I cannot stress enough how this rendition of Agatha, the more it went on, I know she's become a beloved character by a lot of people. As I did a video before, Agatha proves that tokenization of certain characters is needless because they take a character as they had before. Hell, even with Monica, you, for the most part, had never heard of if you were unfamiliar with the books. And then all of a sudden, you go, it's funny, somebody pointed this out to me the other day. You can go like on these Wikia sites and you can see like when something gets announced in the movies, how the trending character, because that's how these guys become experts or whatnot. The trending character is whoever was announced or whoever showed up in the show or something like that. And that's how everybody become experts on these characters because they never heard of them. But it shows with Agatha that, well, they need to, you don't have to, the guys never knew who Agatha was, and now she's a beloved character. But I do not like this because I think there were so many ways that they could have segued Agatha into the Fantastic Four, who are eventually going to be a thing. And for those of you that don't know, that's where we first even learned about Agatha Harkness, with her being basically a nanny. And what sucks is that that ball has been dropped because we're getting this young, weird version of Agatha that is, okay, yeah, she's a witch and all, but she's so important to, and I guess they're going to come back to that, someone teaching her, but she's so important to teaching, let's say, Scarlet Witch how to do and to control her magic, specifically like with those kids and creating them. That was all her using the magic that was taught to her by way of Agatha, which we don't get that. That bridge has already been crossed. We're getting more of a younger depiction of Agatha. So it doesn't feel like Agatha, but she's Agatha in name. And my prediction is that when it comes to these characters, what they end up doing, which sucks, is like they give the writers who are writing these shows like a slate with some names. And they say, okay, this is the person's name. This is their powers. Have at it. And they just write a character that doesn't even have any sort of a connection rather to them, or rather they'll make it as loose as possible. And there's so many examples in which they could utilize that. Now that they got the rights to these characters, to utilize that for other, really as other jumping points to other narratives, and they don't take them, and they would not only please comic book fans, but they would, like I say, people that watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or rather who they're trying to appeal to isn't me. So it's not like that change is getting them fans or something like that. They could have kept their Agatha like Agatha, and it could have been the same thing. They still like it. They eat everything up it is that the Marvel Cinematic Universe gives them anyway. So that's the end of this. I'm not going to rate this show, certainly in this season. I have no idea if there's going to be more seasons, but I can't rate it. It's decent. It's not just absolute trash. It does kind of have some nods to the books, which is why a lot of you guys watch me to hear my thoughts. But I will say that how Monica gets her powers, I hate it. Agatha being as young as she is, I hate it. Aside from that, though, there's, you can get a little something out of it. So we'll see what happens next. Hope you enjoyed these videos. Hope you enjoyed all the reviews. We'll keep you up to date with everything that ends up coming out, and I'll be sure to give you guys long form reviews going into the future. All right, that's gonna end this here review. And until next time, maybe in next season, y'all be easy.